everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me on a video that's going to be focusing on the driving test, specifically around some of the myths that you as students talked to us about on lessons leading up to your driving test. So what I thought I would do in this video is uncover some of the myths that surround the driving test and make sure that when you are going in for it, you feel confident of the things that you can actually get away with. Okay, here we go. Okay, first myth to uncover is probably the most common question we get asked from students, and that is, if I stall on my test, will I fail? The answer is not necessarily. It all depends on where you fail, and more importantly, how quickly you regain control of the vehicle. Now, for me, everybody stalls, and especially on the test when the nerves are kicking in, you want to get going quite quickly, and sometimes you'll move your feet quite quickly or you'll be in the wrong gear, and that inevitably will then stall the vehicle. So let's first take that out of the equation. Everybody stalls. It's how you deal with that that's the most important thing. So during your driving test, you will be asked to pull up on the left on a number of occasions, maybe 3 or 4 times, to park up in a safe place like where I am now. So if I was to prepare to move off, and if I was then to move my feet quite quickly and then stall the car, would I fail? Absolutely not. Because if I look at where I am now, there's actually nobody around that I'm going to affect or I'm going to impede. So the answer is, when it comes to stalling, it's all to do with, do I affect how the road moves? So right now, no, I'm not going to fail. I would get a driving fault, but I wouldn't fail. So don't worry about it from this context. So in this next scenario, when it comes to stalling, might have a different outcome on your driving test. So as you can see, I'm approaching some traffic lights. Now, if I was to stall and regained control quite quickly, and therefore allowed the vehicle behind to get through the lights on the green cycle, then that would go down as a minor fault. However, if I stalled, didn't regain control quick enough, I managed to get through, but the vehicle didn't manage to get behind me through, that would go down as a serious fault. So it's all to do with whether or not I regained control of the vehicle and got moving quite quickly, and that has an impact on whether it would go down as a driving fault or a serious fault. Okay, in this last section, when it comes to stalling, and I've had it before where students have unfortunately selected the wrong gear for a hill like this one, and what they're doing is they're keeping it in perhaps gear 4, trying to get a hill like this. The foot is getting lower and lower on the gas pedal, but yet the car's going slower and slower and slower, and that's when it would stall and therefore result in a serious fault, because I'm in the middle of the road, the car has stopped, and therefore I have become a blockage in the road. So that's another occasion in which a stall would result in a serious fault. I think in conclusion, and kind of wrapping up this section on stalling, I think, like I said earlier, everybody stalls, so don't worry if you do. Now that's, don't get me wrong, that's easier said than done, and especially on your driving test where the pressure is there. But for me, the most important thing is, how do I regain control of this vehicle as quick as I possibly can to have less impact on the road that I'm on. Okay, next section to have a look at is your manoeuvre. Now, for some reason, students tend to worry about the manoeuvre more than the entirety of the test, and it's only one part of your test. It's only one portion of your test. I have put another video together all about the driving test manoeuvres, and I'll leave a link in the card above. But the myth when it comes to this is that students feel that if they were not to get the manoeuvre completed in the first time of asking, so let's say we're doing the reverse bay park and the car didn't finish within the 2 white lines, then students do think that they're going to fail the test. Again, that's not true. The manoeuvre has an objective. So, for example, when it comes to the reverse bay park, the objective is to get your car within the 2 white lines of the parking bay that you are getting into. The examiner is going to mark you on 2 areas: control of the vehicle and the observations that you do. So observations, obviously, you've got to keep it safe throughout it. But the control relates to, yes, keeping the car nice and slow, but it also relates to, does a student fulfill the objective of that manoeuvre in the first time of asking? And if the answer is no, and you did have to drive out and reverse back in again, that would go down as a driving fault. So when it comes to your manoeuvre, think, what is the objective I'm trying to fulfill? The examiner doesn't particularly worry about the method that you use to fulfill that objective, as long as you're doing it safely with good control and observations, and that at the end, when you've completed the manoeuvre, it's fulfill objective. Don't worry if you've got to fix it. Every manoeuvre that you will be asked to do on your driving test, and you're only going to get one, you can easily fix it if you need to. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Okay, the next myth that we often hear as instructors relates to the independent section of your driving test. Now, that's the section where you'll be asked to follow a sat-nav route or a series of road signs for approximately 20 minutes, or roughly half of your test. The myth surrounding this is, if a student perhaps did miss a particular turn or missed a road sign, in doing so, would that result in a serious fault? And the answer is no, because in missing it and not making that turn, or not making the right or the correct turn, you're doing nothing dangerous. It's only when you trying to fix it last minute, and I've had students that have tried to make a left or right turn last minute and late, and therefore in the wrong gear at the wrong speed, and in doing so it's been too fast. That has gone down as a dangerous fault because it's not safe. So when it comes to this section, the independent section, if you were to make a wrong turn or you missed a particular turn, don't panic. Continue on the road that you're on, and either the sat-nav will recalibrate and get you back to where you need to be, or the examiner will step in and kind of give you some instructions as to what to do next. Equate it to the real world. So I use my sat-nav a lot if I'm collecting a new student from their house or from wherever, and often, many times, I've perhaps taken the wrong turn. Now, what I've not tried to do is last minute try to swing it in. I've just kind of kept going on that road I was on, and then look for a suitable point to let the sat-nav recalibrate, or I've tried to park up and find some alternative way to get back. So again, this would only go down as a driving fault if you did it safely. Another really big myth that we often hear, and especially in the early days of students having lessons, is that their friends have told them about this whole pass-fail quota, where examiners have to fail so many students a month, and if you go for a test on a Friday morning, you're less likely to pass as if you go for a test on a Wednesday afternoon. That's not the case. That is definitely a myth. If you think logically, so you've booked your driving test, and you've turned up at the driving test centre, and it's a Friday morning where they fail a majority of students. Now, if you can think logically, you've paid your £63 out for your driving test, you've arrived. Even before the examiner comes to meet you, you have failed your driving test just because it lands on a day where they will fail more students. It's not true. It is fake. So again, that's a complete myth. So hopefully that has dispelled some of the myths that relate to the driving test. I'm sure there's lots more that you may be worrying about. Again, if that's the case, don't hesitate to drop me a message and I'll get back to you with that. But the key thing that I try to communicate with my students leading up to the driving test is that the examiner is there to observe how you drive. So you're not going to be going for your driving test unless you're absolutely ready for it. The examiner really overall is looking at two things. He's looking how safely that you drive the vehicle, and within the law, make sure that you're driving legally. When you break that down, yes, there's lots of bits to that, but as long as you can demonstrate those two areas, you will be fine. As instructors, we're not trying to make mini-me's out of you. So how we teach you varies from student to student.
So when it comes to the driving test, all you got to do is demonstrate those two areas. Am I driving safely and am I driving legally? And I say that's it, but yeah, there's lots to that, but it's not a big thing. Most of my students, when they come back off test, will say to me, actually, that wasn't as hard as I had expected it to be, because all the things that we've been working on are what they've just demonstrated to the examiner. Test nerves, again, are a horrible thing, and I do appreciate that. But when you break it down, those are only the two areas that you need to demonstrate on the day. So if something doesn't go quite right when it comes to your manoeuvre, when it comes to going the wrong way on the sat-nav, don't worry, just fix it safely and in your own time. So thanks for tuning in. Hope that's been of some use to you. In the meantime, what would be great is if you could subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon for future video notifications. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Thanks again for your time, and I'll see you soon. Take care.